Look at a cat. Small, silent, watching. It looks soft, harmless, almost decorative. But 10,000 years ago, that animal was a desert predator with zero interest in you. It did not want your affection. It did not want your house. It did not need your approval. And yet somehow, it moved into human civilization and never left. This is not the story of how humans domesticated cats. This is the story of how cats domesticated us. Around 12,000 years ago, something enormous happened in human history. We stopped moving. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans were hunter-gatherers. We followed food. We followed seasons. We followed animals. Humans started planting crops. Wheat, barley, grains. For the first time, we began storing food. And the moment humans started storing grain, we created a new ecological paradise. For mice, grain storage was basically an all-you-can-eat buffet for rodents, and where rodents gather, predators follow. Out of the dry grasslands of the Near East came a small wild hunter, Felis silvestris libica, the African wildcat. Lean, nervous, solitary. It didn't approach humans because it liked us. It approached because we accidentally built a rodent magnet. Imagine the scene. Early farming villages, mud brick houses, clay grain silos, night falling, fires dimming, and in the shadows, eyes, watching, waiting, hunting. The boldest wildcats who tolerated human proximity had an advantage. More mice, more food, less effort. And humans? We noticed something. The grain losses decreased. The mice numbers dropped. For the first time in history, this wasn't forced domestication like cattle or sheep. No ropes, no cages, no breeding programs. It was tolerance. The wildest, most aggressive cats stayed in the wilderness. The calmer ones stayed near villages. Natural selection did the rest. Fast forward a few thousand years. The relationship moves south, into Egypt. And this is where the story becomes surreal. Because Egypt didn't just tolerate cats, they worshipped them. In ancient Egypt, cats became sacred animals associated with the goddess Bastet, protector of home, fertility, and childbirth. Killing a cat, even accidentally, could be punishable by death. When a family cat died, households shaved their eyebrows in mourning. Archaeologists have discovered entire cat cemeteries containing hundreds of thousands of mummified cats. Think about that. An animal that wandered into villages for mice became divine because cats weren't just rodent control anymore. They symbolized protection. They guarded food supplies in a civilization completely dependent on the Nile's agricultural cycles. A failed harvest meant starvation. Rodents were not a small inconvenience. They were a threat to survival. Cats were guardians of civilization itself, and Egypt made that protection sacred. But cats didn't stay in Egypt. They traveled, on ships. As trade routes expanded across the Mediterranean, grain ships carried an unwanted passenger problem: rats. Cats became unofficial crew members on merchant ships. Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans all carried cats to protect food stores during long voyages. And this is how cats spread across Europe, not as pets, not as status symbols, but as biological pest control units, highly efficient, self-maintaining, low cost. By the time of the Roman Empire, cats were everywhere, quietly embedded into human settlements. But history is not kind to every species forever. In medieval Europe, something changed. Superstition. Cats, especially black cats, became associated with witchcraft, the occult, the devil, their night vision, their silent movement, their independence. All of it became suspicious. Around the same period, Europe was hit by one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Black Death. The plague was carried by fleas living on rats, and fewer cats meant more rats. More rats meant more fleas. More fleas meant more plague. The very animal that helped protect grain and ships for thousands of years was suddenly seen as evil, right when rodent populations exploded. Civilization briefly turned against one of its oldest silent allies. But cats did what cats always do. They survived. Because they don't depend on our approval. They depend on opportunity. Here's what makes cats different from almost every other domesticated animal. Dogs were shaped heavily by human-controlled breeding. We engineered their behavior aggressively for loyalty and obedience. Cats? Not so much. Genetically, modern house cats are extremely similar to their wild ancestors. If you released a house cat into a suitable environment, within a few generations, its descendants would look and behave almost like wildcats again. Cats didn't surrender their independence to join civilization. They negotiated. They kept their hunting instincts, their autonomy, their sharp edges, and we accepted the deal. Why? Because the deal works. Even today, billions of dollars of grain are protected from rodents worldwide, often by chemical means now. But for most of human history, that job belonged to a small carnivore who decided living near us was convenient. Not necessary, convenient. That distinction matters. Dogs evolved to read our emotions deeply. They depend on human social structures. Cats evolved to coexist. They live beside us, not beneath us. And that relationship, strangely, may be why they endured every empire. Egypt rose and fell. Rome collapsed. Medieval kingdoms burned. Trade routes shifted. Religions transformed. The cat remained. In barns, on ships, in alleyways, on thrones, and eventually, on your couch. Here's the deeper truth. Cats are a mirror. They represent a different model of domestication, one where mutual benefit mattered more than control. We didn't conquer cats. We created an environment that rewarded their presence, and they adapted just enough to stay. For over 10,000 years, through agriculture, empire, superstition, and industrialization, this small predator has walked beside us. Not owned, not fully tamed, not fully wild, something in between. And maybe that's why they fascinate us. Because in a world where humans have reshaped almost every species we touch, the cat still feels like it belongs to itself. It entered civilization through a grain silo. It became a god. It survived a witch hunt. It crossed oceans. And today, it rules the internet. All because thousands of years ago, a few wild hunters followed the sound of mice into human settlements and decided to stay. Not because they loved us, but because it made sense. And sometimes, in evolution, that's more than enough.